I like to begin every lesson. I haven't done it yet, but think of this as my first Sunday with you. I like to begin every lesson this way. My mind and my heart are in perfect alignment with the words that I will bring to you today. Did you know that as a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe, that you are free to build your consciousness by design or by default? Sometimes we build it by design, sometimes we build it by default, but we have the choice. We have the freedom to do that. Hopefully, everyone here is building their consciousness by design. And the key to building your consciousness by design is awareness. Awareness that we are spiritual beings. And if we are really spiritual beings, we live in a spiritual universe. And that spiritual universe is governed by spiritual laws. So if we really live in the awareness of that as a spiritual being, you live in a spiritual universe that is governed by spiritual laws, then through the immutable, mystical law of attraction in the universe bows toward us to bless us. So it really actually happens. It's so bizarre. I say bizarre because we can't explain it. Anything that we can't explain, we seem to think is bizarre. But it really isn't bizarre. It's mystical. It's magical. That the universe really bows toward us to bless us. So when we get up in the morning and we leave the house, the first thing you say is, I am a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual laws, and the universe bows toward me to bless me. And today, I give this day to God to guide, knowing that everything I do and everywhere I go, I'm feeling the universe bowing toward me to bless me. And of course, last week, I said that these mystical laws operate through that wonderful mechanism of thought, through the way we think and speak, and the way we act and react to our environment. These laws work through our consciousness. And that mechanism of thought, as I said last week, is the most powerful force in the universe. So if we remember that, then as spiritual beings, we're going to hear ourselves. Not feel guilty, because we never want to feel guilty. All we have to do is change what we just said. So you hear yourself say, oh, that wasn't very positive. I think I'll change that. That's all you have to do. Because guilt is a useless emotion that I don't want you to have to feel. And of course, the reason we call these laws mystical is because we can't explain them. And anything that we can't explain, we call mystical. So they are mystical, but they work. The late Catholic priest and mystic Pierre Teilhard de Chardin once said, humans do not have to look outside themselves for transcendence, growth, and change, because they are internal, they are organic, and universal. Awareness is the key that unlocks the evolutionary magic of our lives. Don't you love that? Imagine a Catholic priest saying that. Awareness is the magical key that locks the evolutionary magic in our lives. So when we become aware, then we become aware of what we're saying, we become aware of what we're thinking, and as I said, you don't have to feel guilty about it, just become aware of it, hear it, and then, of course, you absolutely start to react differently to your environment, and you start to act differently. It's an amazing thing how it happens, but awareness is the trigger that gets you to change your thoughts, to change the way you look at the world, because once we move beneath the thought energy. So think of the thoughts are here, and beneath the thoughts there's a deeper energy. And once we move beneath that to a place where the Buddhists call it transcendence. The Buddhists call it transcendent knowledge. That's what's beneath the thoughts. So if we're willing to move beneath the thoughts, we get to what the Buddhists call transcendent knowledge and what Unity calls mystical Christianity. You know, we have two forms of unity. We have practical Christianity. I'm not one of those ministers. And practical Christianity is the one where they teach you how to get a new car and get a new man and a new woman and make things work on the material plane. And then there is, and that mystical Christianity is led by Charles Fillmore, who was a practical guy. Now, practical stuff is important because without him there would have been no unity. He was a guy that got the money and figured it out and made it work. But what really made unity a healing ministry was Myrtle, who was a mystic. She was the mystical energy behind all the planning and all the material stuff that had to happen. So you have to have both. And fortunately for me, I have a lot of those people that take care of that stuff for me and let me just be the mystic who is here to raise the energy, to raise the consciousness, to see good in your life, to see healing for you, to see balance for you. Because I am the mystical branch of Christianity. That's what I believe in, and that's what you'll hear from me every Sunday. Even though I will certainly bring in the practical as well, because once you become part of the mystical branch of unity, you automatically have all the practical stuff fall into place. It's just amazing how it happens. All that practical stuff that has to happen somehow manages to fall into place for you, and everything flows. And that's the place to begin building our consciousness. We always say, we want to have a prosperity consciousness. How do we do that? Well, we have to move beyond the energy of the everyday thoughts into a place where transcendent knowledge is, where mystical Christianity is. Watch what we say, listen to what we say, watch what we do. Because we could say, well, you know what? I see abundance everywhere. All my needs are abundantly supplied. And then you'll hear yourself saying, oh, I can't do that because I can't afford it. I'm cheap. I'm poor. I'm broke. You'll hear unity people, imagine saying things like that. So what happens is you can't build a prosperity consciousness because what you do is the law of attraction attracts more lack and more limitation and more less than we are into our lives. So in order to build a prosperity consciousness, we begin with the mechanism of thought. We begin hearing ourselves. We begin with an awareness of saying, wow, you know, the other day, I went with one of you to shop because I sold just about everything I had so I could be here. I wanted to come to California and I didn't want it to cost me $8,000 to do it. So I got rid of a whole lot of stuff. And so now I live in a room that's in an apartment that's pretty empty. And so I went shopping with a friend to look at some couches and some sleepers to put in my room, and they were $4,000, $5,000. I said, wow, I just about gave myself away. It had never occurred to me that it was going to cost that much to replace it. But I was very careful not to say I can't afford that, or I don't have enough money for that. I just looked at everything, and every time that little thought crept into my head, oh, that's too much for you, you can't afford that, I shifted it to, wow, that's beautiful, and I really love that, but I need to prioritize my money differently. So all you have to be careful of is what you're saying. Be aware of what you're saying. Listen to yourself. Because if you really want to build a prosperity consciousness, you have to begin there. Because that's the way you design a prosperity consciousness. Today I want to talk about something that really catapults us into designing a prosperity consciousness, and that's tithing. Tithing is consistently, and when I say consistently, I mean every time you get paid, you take 10% out of that and give it to the place that feeds you and spiritually. And so when you do it consistently on a daily basis, it becomes like taxes. You never think about your taxes. You pay them every time. When you go shopping and you see a pair of shoes you like, you don't say, I'm not buying that because it's 8% tax. You just buy it. You don't even think about it. And that's how tithing has to become for us. It has to become so natural that we just do it. We start to think it isn't my money anyway. It's really God's money. It's allowing God into my finances. Because unless we bring God into our finances, we're not putting God first in our lives. And you know, when Jesus was asked, what do we have to do to be abundant? He just looked out at the opulence of the world and he said, look at all this. first in your life, and all of this will be added unto you. To put God first in your life, for me, means to put the God of things first and allow and know that the things of God will follow. So if I put the God of things first, the things of God will follow. And you know, tithing is not new. It doesn't just belong to Unity. Tithing has been going on as far as recorded history. Abraham gave 10% of his income to King Melchizedek, and he gave 10% of everything, all the crops, everything he had, to Melchizedek. And it became a tradition for the Jewish people to do that. And much, much later, when they divided into 12 tribes, they made the tribe of the Levites the priests of their group. And they and every other tribe gave 10% of everything they had to the Levites, who became the source of their nourishment, of their spiritual nourishment. The Levites were their priests. So the temple got 10% of everything they had, and they did it gladly. And you know what? That practice is still alive today, which makes the Jews one of the richest ethnic groups in the world. Because since ancient times, they have been allowing God to be part of their finances. And of course, what happens with that is that it takes away fear. Because if you're allowing God to be part of your finances and you are consistently sharing 10% of your income, then what is there to be afraid of? The promise is, all that you give, you will receive. Everything you give will return to you. Jesus promised that, and I trust his promises. And so you just relax and you let go, and you walk away from a store that has $5,000 couches, and you say, the perfect couch will find me. I don't have to do anything right now. I can take my time and know that the very perfect sleeper is going to find its way into my house. And I don't have to be in any hurry because I know that it's going to happen. Now, tithing is a way of putting God first in our lives. And we want God to be first. Another way is first thing in the morning, connect to your source. First thing I do in the morning, sometimes I get here at 10 o'clock, people think, she must have slept in. I've been up since 6 o'clock. But I get up and I connect to my source and I spend time with my source and I feel that essence of who I am, and I trust knowing that all my needs are always abundantly supplied and everything I need flows to me because the universe bows toward me to bless me. I trust that. Now, I'm luckier than some of you because I was raised that way. When I was raised, every time I got a dime, my mother would say, a penny of that belongs to God. And so I always put a penny aside for Sunday school. But I never thought of spending a nickel or a quarter or a dime without taking God's part out and putting it aside. Now, I had 6 brothers and sisters, and we were all taught that, but my other brothers and sisters said, I'm not doing that. I'm not giving a penny every time I get a dime. That is so dumb. I'm not doing it. Guess what? I became the family bank. In a family that was so poor. I mean, we were really poor. We lived in a tenement in New York City. And we all lived, there was 7 of us, 1 bathroom. And you can all tell stories like that, but you weren't in a tenement in New York City. And we just had enough. But every time I got money, I put it aside. And I discovered that I was the only one in the family that had money. And then I had this spiritual guidance to start charging interest on the money I let them borrow. Because I always had money and they didn't. So my brother would say, hey, Julie, have you got $1? I want to take somebody out for a soda. I want to take a girl out to a soda. I'd say, well, if you pay me 10%. And he'd say, oh, happily. And so he'd pay me 10%. Pretty soon, I was the bank. I was the most prosperous person in the family. And that prosperity has followed me all my life. I have never lacked for anything. And anything that I need or want happens for me. Like being here. Isn't that bizarre that I got back here? That's bizarre. But I'm here because anything that I've ever wanted happens. Why? Because I have a whole lifetime of making God first in my life. putting God into my finances, not being afraid that God is going to dump me, because God is not going to dump you. God, you can't be God-given. You think that's funny, Marilyn, because right now you feel a little dumb, but it isn't funny. And so anyway, it's one of those mystical principles that never, ever dies. Mystical principles don't disappear. You know, mystical principles continue. Stephen Covey says, mystical principles don't die. They aren't here one day and gone the next. They can't be destroyed by fire, earthquakes, or theft. Principles are deep, fundamental truths. It isn't just the Jews or the traditional Christians who tithe. New Agers are teaching everywhere they go. Every book you read tells you, if you want to be prosperous, you have to tithe. It's not a religious thing. It's an ancient principle that works. It's building a prosperity consciousness by design so that you absolutely know without a doubt that the universe is always bowing toward you to bless you. And so our affirmation, I was just going to say before I give you the affirmation, try it. Try it. Try it and see what happens. Try to tithe consistently 10% of your income. And then the next step is to serve. To just serve. And of course a lot of you are, I'm preaching to the choir because you are servers. I mean, this church is full of wonderful volunteers. But try tithing and then add serving and see what happens. It's magical. It's mystical. It's worth it. And the affirmation is, all that I give returns to me spontaneously from known and unknown sources. Let's say that together. I'll say it in 2 parts. All that I give returns to me spontaneously.
All that I give returns to me spontaneously
from known and unknown sources.